Welcome to Police K9 Radio from the Shots Fired podcast studio. Rich, we finally made it.
We did it. You can see us now.
We're here.
But you have to jump over to YouTube to the Shots Fired guys. Watch their podcast. You get to see our face.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this on the radio right now under Police K9 Radio podcast, you can actually go on your computer and go to the Shots Fired podcast on YouTube, and boom, there we are.
There we are.
To your dismay.
Or actually on your cell phone. Greg, we know you're a little older. Most people watch YouTube on their cell phone.
On your cellular phone?
Yeah, so if you're actually on your mobile phone listening, which probably most of you are listening.
Greg said radio, didn't he? He said radio.
I did say radio.
I don't know if anybody listens to us on the radio. and I mean, we don't have to tell everybody. We're already on our second or third take anyway because we're brand new to this whole video thing.
I'm not in my F-150.
You're not sitting in front of Starbucks trying to whip up some Wi-Fi.
It's really weird.
You're nervous. It's all good.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to do with these. Just
hold on.
Okay. That's. I don't know if you can say that on. You can say that on radio. Yeah. Hey, so anyway, let's just jump right into it. What have you been up to, Rich?
I have a couple dogs that are out working with some new agencies right now that we put on the street within the last 6 weeks. We have some that just left last week, and then we have 2 dogs that just graduated your basic over at DTAC, and within the last month, 2 of them have got successful physical apprehensions on suspects, and we are really proud of those dogs. Excited that they're working out for the handlers.
Yeah, shout out to Pat and Austin.
Pat and Austin out there doing work, and especially to Amy. Those dogs both came from Aim K9 up in Canada. She killed it raising those dogs. We definitely have a pending grab on a couple more dogs that she's raising right now. So
take them.
Yeah, she's doing good stuff. So
cool.
Of that.
Awesome. Hey, just to follow up on our last podcast, we talked about the Tucson Police K9 Instagram. And it was a scenario that was basically that transition drill where they're approaching that corner, suspect jumps out, has a gun, and the whole drill was to drop the long line, get it out of your hands, engage the suspect, and then move laterally as you do. And again, we ran this with all of our dogs, 50, 60 different teams. And what we were finding across the board is handlers were holding on to that line. Well, we actually added a few things to it over the last week. And I'm going to grab a prop here.
I'll put that magazine for you.
Out of the convenient locker placed to my right. This is a blue gun, and if I can make one recommendation for you supervisors that are out there and for you handlers, I know every year at the end of the year they're like, "Hey, what do we need? Let's get another 2 bite suits, or let's buy 3 or 4 sleeves, or whatever it is." If you guys have the money, this is the investment to make. This operates just like a regular Glock, one that many of you already carry on the street. Have multiple magazines. You can get blanks for it. You can get sim rounds for it. And when you fire it, it feels just like your actual firearm. And so by going to this, it's also safe because it's blue. So there's no need to do additional weapons checks. It only cycles the sim rounds or similar rounds. You can't put an actual round through it. So, we're always going for that reality-based training, and this is the type of tool that's going to take your training to the next level. So we added these in where the officer would have this on their belt. And again, when you're running these scenarios, you got to have all your shit on. Like, don't show up and have like this gun and put it in your BDU pocket or sticking it in your belt. If you're not training in all your gear, you're doing yourself a disservice. So we added this to the scenario in which I would put 2 or 3 rounds in the weapon itself. I give them another magazine, put 2 or 3 rounds in that, and then their instructions, if they have a weapon failure, then they need to get their weapon back in order. So as they approach, suspect jumps out, points a gun, they come up, they start firing, and the guys that held on to the line, right? And again, a lot of this is subconscious because we haven't trained it. And Rich and I talked about it. We've actually drilled into our handlers, hey, hold on to that line when shit hits the fan. In this situation, you don't want to. And we're going to talk with our guest, Kyle Schoberg, here in a minute. And he's going to share his experiences where I think his dog actually saved his life. And it's because his dog wasn't attached to him at the time during the shooting. But when you come up and you fire, they would fire 2-3 rounds. The gun would run out of rounds to simulate a malfunction, and then it would have to come up and do a mag change. We had guys actually taking the gun and trying to fix drop the magazine, trying to get it back in order by throwing another magazine with one hand while they're holding on to the dog. So it's something that you need to train. And it's like we're very good at training at the range where, hey, there's a thread, I'm coming up, I'm engaging the thread, I'm moving, but have you done it with the dog in your hand? So the other thing we did is instead of every time the guy jumps out, because the guys start catching on, right? And we get the cheaters that are out there looking, oh shit, what's going on over there? Yeah. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. All right, I'm ready to freaking come up with my gun. We had guys starting off, they had the long line in their hand, they had their gun out, and I'm like, whoa, time out. Are you usually searching with the long line and your gun at the same time? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, put the gun in your holster.
Hopefully not.
Put your gun in your holster and let's do it like you do it on the street. So we would have our decoy Phil, and he would pop out, and sometimes he'd pop out with his hands up and surrender. And then we would make the handler now go through the motions of affecting the rest with cover and verbalizing what he needs to have done. We also had Phil jump out, and he's got a cell phone in his hand. So by doing that, we would run 3 or 4 times, maybe once or twice. He would actually come out with a gun. There'd be an engagement. They'd let go of the dog. They'd move to cover, do the weapon failure drill, get it back in order. And then keeping the gun downrange on your suspect where, Phil would take the bite, go around a corner. A lot of times they would verbal recall from cover and keep the gun forward. And if you guys aren't doing that, if you're always recalling your dog back to a toy, you need to check in every now and again, make sure they don't perceive this as a toy. So there's like a lot of dynamics involved in it. But what we found is if you're not training this regularly, then you can talk about it like, oh, that's what I would do. But when it comes down to doing it, your muscle memory takes over. So make sure you guys are doing that. Then the other part of this is on your documentation. When you guys are documenting your training, you need to put in there that you practice de-escalation, right? Because we ran 4 drills. It took literally 5, 6, 7 minutes a dog. And in there was 2 de-escalations, right? Where it wasn't a bite. And then maybe 2 engagements and an escalation where it became a shooting.
Yeah, I think it's important also. I mean, you're doing some critical thinking there, right? Like we're setting up these scenarios where, and we can throw ourselves under the bus. When we started training in K9, it was go stand at the door, make an announcement, throw the dog in there, let the dog go find somebody. You hear the decoy yell, he's got me. You run in, you run past all the places where somebody could be hiding. You don't worry about cover. You go get your dog, take him off and put him in the car into scenario, right? We're not doing that anymore. We're making handlers think, and we're making handlers think, we're making the dogs work. We're practicing tactics. We're doing the things that are necessary. But then, like you say, document that when you get on the stand and you start getting eaten up by defense, you can be like, hey, no, not only are we working the dogs, but we're working scenarios and we're working critical thinking. We're going through all this stuff. I'm working my weapon and I'm working de-escalation. I'm doing everything, not just training my dog to go and find and bite a guy.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Agreed. And your training log should have a couple words in there. De-escalation, tactical repositioning. Right. Once you go ahead and you deploy your dog, or you don't deploy your dog, you move to cover, you get your dog back. Okay, we're going to freeze the scene. We're going to get drones. We're going to get SWAT. We're going to do other things. This is a armed barricade, right? Show that you're doing that critical thinking. And honestly, after 6 months of just training your dog in the beginning, I get it. It's kind of overwhelming, the multitasking when you first get a dog. But after that initial period of training the dog, I mean, if you've had your dog out on a street for a year, you should not be going and just going, okay, hey, we're doing call-offs. We're going to do a building search and stay back here by the door. Like all of that is like the dog already knows it. You're not gaining anything by it. Now it's really time to hit those basic skills and really integrate your dog into the type of things you're going to see on the street. And that's where we go back to reality-based training. I
think Kyle was talking about the blue gun too, and the downside of using what we've used previous to that, like the red guns, that don't allow any action from the gun, and how that creates some bad habits.
Yeah, but I think one of the biggest problems that canine handlers have, and trainers, is that they get so stuck on the dog, training the dog, that they don't even think about the critical thinking aspect of it from the handler. And like this class that I was just teaching at the Western States Police Canine Conference and at HITS is, I learned that through experience. And obviously with experience, that's where you learn mistakes, right? And as a young handler, right, we had a different trainer at the time. I wasn't taught those things. I was taught open the door, throw the dog in, wait for the scream, just go in. And there was like 0 tactics applied to it. We didn't wear our full kit that we would wear on the street. And so then I was going out there getting dog deployments and making mistakes. And I learned through real life experience that shit just doesn't work. And it made my job more difficult as a handler. I had a couple accidental dog bites that should have never happened.
One was on me when you walked him in and you bit my.
Yeah, that did. Yeah. That was that training.
And then I ran into Jeff from another local agency, and he says, yeah, you know what? That freaking.
Oh, yeah, he did.
He circled around, he tagged him in the leg. And I go, well, what would Kyle say? He goes, first thing he said was, I'm not buying you a new pair of pants.
Yeah. Yeah, my bad. Sorry, Jeff. But honestly, like, and I started to learn, and then obviously when we transitioned over to your guys' training group, that the critical thinking thing is way overlooked in training. And when I was running a scenario just the other day, it was probably 70% of the handlers like would show up, no gear on, shove the gun in their pocket. And the scenario was a no bite scenario, right? Like, but all they had to do was ask certain questions when I would tell them the scenario. But they were so in tune with like, well, this is a canine conference, it's canine training, so it has to be a dog call. Mm-hmm. And there's a time and a place for that, obviously, but I don't think it can be 100% of the time. Right. And the trainers that train that 100% of the time, when handlers get into situations on the street, they're only thinking dog. And there's so many other tools now that we have to be able to either, get somebody into custody or flush them out of a vehicle, a house, a barricade or whatever. You really learn the critical thinking aspect of it. And there are times on the street where, and like I told a lot of these guys, I'm like, look, everyone, you're going to show up on scene to something and everybody looks at you, right? You guys both know.
100%.
Like, all right, the canine guys here, solve the problem. And they look at you and the dog, like you're it, like you're the end all be all. And early in my career, like I thought that way, until, I've made some bad mistakes, but if you're a handler out there, like I understand sometimes you don't run the training, but you can have like these conversations with your training group, because I would get so frustrated showing up to training. Everyone was just sitting around bullshitting. Nobody really wanted to do anything. And then it was like, all right, let's just get a quick rep in real quick. And then that was it. Like have those conversations with your training group and maybe your trainer, if you have to. But I truly think being a handler, a good handler, you have to have good critical thinking skills, right? Like that's one of the things we say for SWAT guys. To be a SWAT guy, you got to have good critical thinking skills. I think more so as a dog handler.
Yeah. And to expound upon that before we get into introductions, because we need to introduce this guy. By using the blue gun here is you can continue to pull the trigger, and if there were sim rounds and we use blanks, it continues to cycle. And what we found is by using the plastic guns, or if you have a gun that doesn't cycle, or say you're using your service weapon and you're like, hey, we safety checked it 10 times, you pull the trigger once, we're building that muscle memory where we come up and we shoot once, and I saw it where he goes bang, he's dead.
Yeah, like he said bang probably.
Yeah, he said bang and he pulled it once. And then it's like, okay, we're not developing that muscle. And, we gotta practice and train like we deploy. So these guns allow you to do that. So that's my first point. Second point, what Kyle was just talking about, if you guys aren't doing reality-based training, again, you're missing the whole point of this. What gets us in trouble is our decision making. Bill Lewis does a whole class on that, liability 360, yep. And it's all on decision making. So very rarely is it a training issue, but yeah, we have some issues where a dog gets an accidental. That doesn't cost your agency a lot of money. What costs your agency a lot of money is when the handler makes an intentional decision, which could potentially be the wrong one, under stress. And now it's a deliberate act, and now it goes into potentially even a criminal act. And what we got to be doing for our guys, and what Rich and I feel a responsibility when we're at training, is we need to show these guys a variety of situations, scenarios, let them make the mistakes, let them make poor decisions. And usually they're way harder on them than we are. They're on themselves. And then they learn from it. So if anything similar comes up, they've already thought through it. They don't have to come up on the fly, under this stressful situation and make that split second decision and maybe make the wrong one.
And I think that's a benefit of having some outside training, right? Like if you're responsible for your own training, you're not going to typically put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And if you do, you already know what that's going to be, right? So like there's a few agencies out there where it's 5 or 6 canine handlers in the agency, and one of the handlers is in charge of putting on the training every week. Well, that gets stale. It's hard to do. It's hard to think out of the box, and it's hard to kind of screw your partners over. Hey, I'm going to make this really difficult, make you think. It might embarrass you a little bit, but I don't want you coming back and embarrassing me next week. So let's just keep it all tame and easy to deal with, where we can go out there and we can step it up a little bit. They can be upset at us for a little bit and then work through it, start thinking and be more prepared.
I would say, please embarrass me at training, because if I get embarrassed at training, that means I probably won't do that out on the street, because now I'm going to think twice about it. I
just got a text from one of the handlers after training last time, and he's like, "Hey, I apologize. I normally wouldn't make those kind of decisions." And so he was still thinking about the scenarios like hours after the point where he felt like he had to reach out to me. I was like, "Dude, take it easy. You're a brand new handler. You're right where you're supposed to be." I fucked up all the time. It's just it wasn't caught on body cam back then.
Learn from it though.
Yeah. So why don't we get into our guest here, Kyle? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, your history, your canine experience, your law enforcement experience, all that good stuff.
So for those of you that don't know, I'm Kyle Schoberg. Was on a previous episode with you guys a while back, but 15 years in law enforcement total, coming up on 16 years this year. And I've worked the bulk of that in Northern California here in the Sacramento area. Currently, right now, I am the K9 sergeant and a patrol sergeant. Prior to that, I was...
How do you like that? Is that the best job in the world?
On camera, on air? Absolutely.
It's not what you told me on the phone the other night.
So I'll digress. There's a lot of cool, good benefits of being a supervisor, but it has its...
Well, the good thing, you're going to talk about it. You have a ton of experience to share with guys.
Yes. So prior to promoting in 2020, I was a dog handler from early 2014 until I promoted. So I did that for a number of years, worked 2 dogs, had a Mal for my first dog. And then when we retired him, ended up getting a German Shepherd. So that was my last dog, Axel, that I retired with. And then getting onto the K9 team, I swear that I worked really hard. I knew I wanted to be a dog handler right at the beginning of my career. So I worked really hard to get to that position. And I thought, be proactive, go out, make a bunch of arrests, do all the things that you should do to get on the K9 team, which worked. But then it was when I got on the K9 team, and I tell guys this, I'm like, it's like a whole new world, right? You are the tip of the spear on the most violent things. Always, you are the tip of the spear. So getting thrusted into those types of calls on a regular basis really, I think, trajected my career. As a dog handler, I was in 4 officer involved shootings, within 4 years of each other. So it was back to back, right? Mm-hmm. All violent encounters involving people with guns. Hell, one guy had bombs and tried to blow us up, and we had a dog deployed on that one.
And what Middle Eastern country do you work in?
Yeah, right.
It's here in California.
Yeah, and look, that's obviously rare, right? Most guys aren't probably going to experience that, but you might. And that's why you talk about training and real life scenario based training. That's why that stuff is so important. And I really value that now, being involved in those things, because in my last shooting I was in with Axel, I did have a gun malfunction, right? And so my dog's on the bite. We're in the shooting with this guy, and I have a gun malfunction. Mm-hmm. And thank God that I took that stuff serious at the range, the whole gun malfunction drills, because muscle memory kicked in and I was able to move past the malfunction and get back in the fight. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's, you never know when that shit's going to happen. And nobody suspects, I'm going to have a malfunction in a shooting. Well, you might.
Put a dog at the end of a line and have a malfunction. And can you think through that?
Yeah.
And if you're not practicing it,
probably not. I would actually venture to go as far as to say you're not.
Well, we have the video of that scenario with Axel. And you can look at that and imagine what that would be like if Axel was yanking him down the sidewalk directly into that shooting. Maybe you get lucky, but the chances of that being all fucked up, and the guy not having to deal with Axel because you are. I mean, that's what made you. I mean, that is what made that scenario even more successful. Is he was having to deal with your dog, and then you obviously,
and we'll talk about that deployment, and you guys can, if again, like Greg said, if you're listening to this, you can jump over to our YouTube channel and watch it. We'll show the video, but. Yeah, I was fortunate as a dog handler. I got involved in a lot of canine deployments. I made a lot of mistakes early on. I was able to learn from them. And I'm just super grateful for my career as a canine handler. I really think the level of training that you guys provide got me through all those violent encounters that I was involved in, because you guys take the training so serious. Like, it forces you to be a better cop, not just a canine handler, but a cop, right? And we always talk about you're a cop first, canine handler second. Mm-hmm. And in that shooting with Axel, my last one, I think had I got out of my car and just grabbed the dog, because I'm thinking I'm a dog guy and that's what I need to do, I think I would have got killed. But you train gunfight first, dog second, and I truly think that saved my life.
Greg, you talked about it on the last podcast that we did, that some guys or some agencies will send an officer to canine training with the knowledge that officer is maybe not the best tactical guy, and hey, we'll send him there because Greg works tactics, and now you're in charge of selecting some of these officers to be canine handlers. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? Like, if you have an officer that's out there and they are involved and they want to be in canine, or even if they want to be in SWAT, but in your situation they want to be in canine and they're just not that tactically sound on the streets without a dog, what are your thoughts on putting them into a canine position now to have a dog and to be tactically sound as well?
Oh, I think that's huge. Like, in fact, we were just at the conference in Reno, right? And I brought up there's a guy who's interested in being on our canine team, and, younger cop. And I brought him up to be a decoy, because I think being a decoy and watching all these scenarios and all these different dogs go and watching handlers, you learn, dude, it's so invaluable. Like, you learn so much. And I decoyed for 3 years before I got on the canine team. I mean, I can't tell you, I learned a lot. Dog behavior, handler mistakes, how dogs are searching, right, as being the bad guy. So yeah, I think if you're asking if I think cops, if you want to be a handler, you should go to canine training, because if I think that'll better you, like 100%. I mean,
and just to be a better tactical cop. I mean, I think it's
no doubt.
I think your point is like, don't send the guy to canine school in hopes that he's now going to be a more tactically sound.
Don't give him a dog saying this is going to take them to the next level and they're going to learn tactics. It's like, you got to come with the tactics, and you got to be like, that's why we like when the SWAT guys, they come up, hey, it's a SWAT guy. Okay, I can teach a SWAT guy some dog skills. But to take somebody that's just honestly a shit show when it comes to tactics and decision making, with good dog skills, give me the SWAT guy that he already has that foundation. Because you add a dog to that mix, and it's just, your job's gotten twice as hard. And I always say it to the new guys, I'm like, you're about to embark on probably the hardest specialty detail you're going to do in law enforcement, because now you're responsible for this dog, controlling your cover officers, the multitasking that goes into that. It's way harder. And usually by week 4 or 5, and we get into the scenarios, and the handlers are like, holy crap. Like, I had no idea. I knew you said that in the beginning, but I had no idea. And I'm doing shit that I would have never done without this dog. So,
well, we see that happen a lot, right? Like, in the beginning, we have a young handler that comes in with a dog, and we just ask them to do a building search, and they do a myriad of dumb shit. Like, they just go in and the dog's all over the place. They're not checking corners. They're moving past doorways because they're so focused on the dog that they're forgetting their tactics. And they're like, hey, take the dog out of the scenario, come search this building. And they do perfect, right? Everything's dialed in. The building search is dialed in. They're flowing, they're filling, they're checking all their corners, they're doing everything. So it's just the fact that they're having to do both of these things at the same time that throws them off. So if you don't have a good foundation in tactics, now you add a dog to the mix, that's never going to be right.
Correct. 100%.
And quite honestly, that's really dangerous. And supervisors who are listening to this, I mean, if you're the one making the decision to pick a handler, I would take that into consideration, because you just said it, like, it is probably, I think it's the hardest position in law enforcement. And I also think it's the most dangerous thing in law enforcement.
K9 cannot be a consolation prize. It can't be like, hey, we had Jimmy tried out for detectives. He didn't quite make it. Let's throw him a dog. That should keep him happy and keep him at our agency. And we do understand that there's a need to keep guys and gals at your agencies, and you have to do certain things. But if you're making K9 a consolation prize for missing out on some other promotion or assignment, you're going to ruin your program, put your agency at risk, that cop at risk. Like a lot of things can happen.
You're better off letting that position die on the vine. And I know everybody's like, we want to fill it because we don't want to lose this, and we might not be able to lose it. Let it die before you put in somebody that's not meant for it, because it will cause a lot of heartache. And it's not fair to the handler to have to talk to somebody into it, and they feel obligated, and they take this on because this is a lifestyle. The amount of liability, the officer safety end of it. If you're not into this 100%, then I feel like you're jeopardizing, not only the career of that officer that you're kind of pushing to do it, but potentially his life, right? And the safety of everybody else involved. So
I think that's actually a good segue. And Kyle, can we kind of talk about your progression of some of those OISs and deployments you had, and what led you to doing the classes that you're doing now, doing the podcast that we're doing now, and kind of how we ended up here?
Yeah. So it was about a year, I think, after I got my first dog, being on the K9 team, I was involved in my first OIS. And I remember going to this call, which was a domestic violence call. There was a mention of a gun, small children in the house, calling 911 saying, hey, dad's beating my mom. He's got a gun. And I remember responding as the dog guy. They specifically asked for me as a handler. And I remember thinking, like, man, in my head, I'm like, should I get my dog? Do I get my dog out on this? Because, right, like, this guy's armed with a gun. And at the time, I think one or two officers were just getting on scene, and, they start hearing gunshots from an unknown location where this guy was in the apartment complex. But luckily for me, I decided I'm gonna like forget the dog. Like, I'm just gonna go and help these guys. So I left the dog in the car. I think had I brought the dog with me, I'm certain the dog would have been killed in this scenario. So I was involved in my first shooting, and that actually stuck with me. Thinking, like, should I bring my dog? Because, like I said, my first trainer I had, we didn't train for that kind of stuff. We didn't have those types of discussions. And not to bag on anybody, but it was just, that was like the level of quality training I was getting. So that really stuck with me. That stood out. Like, why, should I even be thinking that? Like, why am I even thinking, like, should I get my dog out on this or not? Right. When you're talking about a shooting call, someone armed with a firearm with two officers on scene, like, it sounds like a no brainer to me now that, like, that's not a dog call.
But nobody tells you. I mean,
nobody
we talked about that in the beginning. And you're just like, well, should I have this dog? Am I supposed to bring it out? Like, is it like the same things you were going through? Like, nobody, when we first started all this, nobody was giving us the answers to that. You just go to training, and like we talked about before, throw the dog in.
Yeah, so it's just like,
I guess I bring it out on every call. I don't know.
Exactly. And so, like, that really, like, stood out to me. And that's why I really say, like, just because you're the dog guy, like, you're a cop first, you're a handler second. And so I started to, like, really kind of train myself, like, okay, what am I really going to be bringing my dog out on, and what am I not going to be bringing my dog out on? And I was a year later, I'm in a second shooting, and, this guy's armed with a firearm. He'd already tried to burn his wife's house down, or his ex-wife's house down. And he actually made two or three homemade explosive devices, set him up in the driveway. He's armed with a gun. He's calling 911. He's like, hey, I'm going to freaking blow my house up. I'm going to start killing people if you guys don't get here in X amount of time. And so I show up, and I've got Chris Boston with me, who's a canine handler at the time, whose dog actually just passed away 2 days ago. So we're sorry to hear about that.
Sorry, buddy.
We show up and we have, like, a very short discussion with each other. Like, okay, we're both dog handlers. We're both on the scene. And we had, I think, 3 cops there on scene with us at that time. And, I told Chris, I'm like, hey, get the dog, right? Because you're at least a force option at this point. There was enough cops on scene that we could afford to have him out with the dog in case we needed it. And, like, again, as a dog handler, like, you have to consider those options, right? Is there enough cops on scene where I can have my dog out? Maybe I can position myself to, if things were to change, maybe the dog's now in play, But if there's only 1 or 2 cops out on scene, I'm saying leave the dog in the car. Okay. And figure it out later.
And we know there's agencies out there that are listening to this and they're wondering what the hell we're talking about, right? Like LA, Boston, those kind of places that have thousands of officers and dozens that can show up to a serious,
Sure.
If you have a call where somebody's blowing people up and threatening people with guns and doing, you're going to get the whole squad. Well, sometimes in some of these Northern California agencies and across the nation, the whole squad is 3 guys.
Yeah. Most places, and honestly, a lot of guys listening to this probably are like, have a patrol shift of like 3 to 6 guys.
Right. That's typical.
I think that's pretty average. So whatever, he gets his dog out and, we both felt comfortable with that. And me and a couple other officers, we kind of migrate our way up to the house. I thought Chris did an excellent job. He didn't marry himself to us. He had another cover officer with him and he took a different angle to give the dog the best picture so that if he had to deploy, the dog isn't staring at a gaggle of cops, to get one of us bit. So I thought he did a great job on that. And again, that all comes down to critical thinking, right? Separating yourself with your cover officer, which is crucial to obviously you want to have a cover officer, but giving that dog like the best chance for success and not getting an accidental bite. So he did that, and we make our way up to this house, and ultimately it ends up in a gunfight, a prolonged gunfight. So he's out of play, but he's in a safe spot with a dog. There's enough of us engaged in this gunfight where we ended up being successful. Now, the interesting thing about that is when Chris makes his way over with the dog, now that we shoot this guy in his driveway, he's laying there and the guy actually goes down right next to one of these explosive devices that he had set up in the driveway, and he had poured gas all over it. And we were having a conversation like, hey, should we go up and, dead check? And I have my own theories about dead checking now, but
So I'm calling him because everybody's like, hey, we want to run this scenario in training, like, to show the picture for the dog. Like, how do we document this? And I'm calling a deceased de-escalation verification deployment.
Yeah. I don't even like them, to be honest. Like, we have so many other tools now that we can use to check the welfare of somebody, see if they're going to be laying away. But
I agree. But having said that, like, the suspect is down there on top of the gun per se. And we've had officers use the dog to send them up on a long line, try to fish them in so they bite the arm to pull the arm out from underneath them. So that when they do make their approach or SWAT makes their approach, at least like they're not laying on top where you can't see the gun.
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about, Kyle, too, is what we go back to with some of these other agencies that have more units available. You might, in the agency you work at, you might have more things available, whether it's a robot or a drone or something like that.
40s or beanbag shotguns,
whatever.
Things,
But we have rural agencies where there's a cop on at night.
Yeah, there's a time and a place.
And they've got a couple highway patrol for cover.
Yeah.
And that's it.
20 minutes out. 45 minutes out.
Probably longer than that.
Yeah. I mean, we talk with Scott up in Sierra County. Like sometimes his, nearest cover is an hour away. If,
responding from their house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, real quick, back to that scenario. So, Chris did a great job. He marries up with us. He's got the dog. And, we had that conversation. Are we going to use the dog to go up and check him? And we were like, we kind of joked. We're like, well, what if the dog grabs that explosive device or something and like brings it back to us? Right? Like,
something crazy.
Yeah. Right. So like, we're like, probably not a good idea. Yeah. And honestly, like, I was confident that he was deceased, based on things that led up to that. So, but it was like, I had taken my handler hat off. Like, Chris was the handler in that moment, and he ran that scene for us after that. Like, but I think that's the skill set that you get being a dog handler. Like, you really get really good at your craft.
You should.
Yeah, you absolutely should.
And we all know the handlers that, aren't out there pushing the pace, but as a handler, you should be on every hot call that comes up on your shift. I mean, if the tones go out, like, you should be there. And
you might be directing your supervisors, like what to do, right? Because you do it a lot.
Yeah.
Some don't.
Absolutely.
So that was my second shooting. And then my third one, car chase, and guy runs on foot. And again, like, I didn't get out and grab the dog. I started to, and then he circles back and starts digging around in his car. And At the time, I thought he was trying to retrieve a firearm, because at that time, a month before that, we had an officer in the county got shot and killed. 2 others got shot. 2 others were shot. And then on the day of that officer's funeral that was killed, 2 other cops were shot. Right. So it was a violent time, I think, here in the area where we work. And so my dog wasn't involved in that one. But my 4th one after that was directly involved, my dog. And
this one kind of ties into what we were just talking about the drill that Tucson Police K9 put up. Again, go to their Instagram and you can kind of see it. And I'll actually throw some stuff up on my Instagram too from our training group and some tips on that. But can you go into a little bit more detail on that one? Because and you've already mentioned it, and in my opinion as well, I think that your dog saved your life on this one.
100%. Not only my life, but there was another brand new officer that was there with me on scene. And there were a bunch of civilians out in a parking lot where I'm confident the dog saved all of our lives. So in that scenario, I actually had just got on shift. I'm rolling into the city. One of our other handlers, Nate, was already at work. We overlap, and some of the patrol guys went to an alarm call at a business complex. And when they got there, a gentleman came out of the business and then ran back in. So we set up containment on the building. I heard Nate respond out there. I was just getting on work, logging on. I thought, I'm gonna go out there and help him out. I go out there, and I had just recently had a dog deployment. So he was up for an apprehension. And so, we had a discussion, and he was gonna go in, and we got a search team together. And obviously I'm fast forwarding, trying to call this guy out, whatever, it's not happening. So they decided to go in and search for this guy. I'm on the backside with Axel, my dog, and in case the guy squirted out the back. And I brought a brand new cop, I believe he got off FTO that week. So he's like fresh off training, good dude. And I'm in the back, and I'm sitting there having this like little conversation with him, like, hey man, here's how you don't get bit by a canine on calls. And I'm going over that with him. And while that's going on, dispatch gets on the radio, and they say, hey, there's a person that called 911 saying there's a guy in the mall parking lot, which just so happens to be literally right across the street from where we're at. So all we had to do was cross one major roadway, and we're in the mall parking lot. And they said he possibly had a gun, and they thought he may have shot it off in the parking lot of the mall, but they weren't sure. Okay, so the information really was very vague, and it was like he may have had they literally said it could have been a phone or it could have been a gun.
Yeah, so real ambiguous. Really? But we go to those all the time, right? Yeah. Like it's like, hey, it's either like way up here or it's nothing.
Yeah, right. Either or.
Yeah.
So nobody even got dispatched to it. Honestly, it was just like hey, just be advised.
Be different kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Because we get a lot of that, and so. I didn't even think anything of it. And then I'm sitting there thinking, you know what, man, there's been all these active shooters at malls and stuff lately. Like we should probably go to that. Because if we don't go to that and it turns into something all right. Okay. So I asked Joe, I was like, hey man, you want to go to that? Let's go over there. And he's like, yeah, I'll go with you. And he's all eager. And I asked Nate, I communicate with him. You good in there? Yeah, he's good. I take Joe, we split over there. And sure enough, I pull into the mall parking lot. And I'm looking at I remember reading the CAD call to refresh my memory of the dude's description. And I look up, and sure shit, I see the guy matching the description. It was like very crystal clear, like black hoodie with like white stripes on it in a backpack. And I see him, and he's running like full sprint towards the JCPenney's on the outside of the mall. And I'm thinking in my head, man,
is that away from you or kind of to the side?
He's a good couple hundred yards away from me, because it's just a huge wide open parking lot in the mall.
Okay.
And he's just dead sprint towards it was like JCPenney's. And I remember thinking, man, I don't want to be chasing this dude in the mall. Like we've had to do that before, and that's just a freaking like logistical nightmare to do that. So I throw my lights and sirens on, thinking to try to spook him or whatever. And luckily it worked. He looks up, and now he sees me and Joe, and I got my sirens and lights on. And now he like beat feet the opposite way of the mall. So he's running away from the mall. And the further you go in the mall parking lot, there's a Red Robin, like a Burger King, a tire shop, whatever, at the edge of the mall parking lot. And so I'm having to negotiate through the parking lot. Like people were actually like cheering him on. They're laughing. They thought it was all fun and games, right? Until the gunfire happened. But I go out on the main roadway and he's just kind of like jogging down the sidewalk, trying to get away. Nothing in his hands. And he just had a backpack on. So as the K9 guy, I'm going down this like checklist in my head. Like, do I deploy on this guy? Like, what's he doing? It was pretty limited information. Now there were 2 RPs. One thought for sure that he had a gun. The other one wasn't sure. And so anyways, there's people around, right? And in my head, like I made the decision that I was going to deploy on this guy after giving him the opportunity to surrender. And if he didn't surrender, I was going to deploy. Okay. Cause I felt like the
public safety risk
outweighed. Yeah. The public safety risk outweighed not deploying, due to the time. It was July. And it was like 6 o'clock at night. So you can only imagine how many people were out. So I do just that. I cut him off with my car. I get out and gunfight first. I draw down on him. I leave the dog in the car and he's from me to you. So just a few feet away. And I tell him, hey, get on the ground. And he just stops and he stares at me. And you guys know you've contacted enough guys out on the street. Like you get that 1,000-mile stare in someone's face and you're like, yeah, like that's not right. And I remember he like gave me that look and doesn't say a word. He turns around and he kind of like does the look back. And we all know what that means. Like, okay, he's going to run. Yep. So he does. He takes off running back the direction that he just came down the sidewalk. I give him some canine warnings. He's going to get bit. He's not listening. I get Axel out and in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to send Axel. Joe has now showed up with me and he's out of his car and I deploy Axel. And I'm thinking like every other time, okay, he'll bite him or take him into custody, whatever. Well, after I deployed the dog, the dog is now probably halfway to him. He spins around and I don't think he saw the dog at first, but he ends up pulling a .357 Magnum out of his front waistband and he spins and you guys can see in the video, he's firing back towards my direction. So I feel something hit me in the left side of my rib cage and, like a big impact, right? So I'm thinking like, I just got shot and now Axel has caught up to the bad guy. And now the bad guy sees Axel. And just as Axel goes to get him in the arm, he turns towards Axel and he fires right in his face, point blank. And I see Axel divert and he goes out of my tunnel vision, out of my peripheral, and he's gone. And in my head in that moment, like, I know it's hard for people to comprehend this, but if you've been involved in shooting, you can understand that like time does slow down. That's a real thing. Your brain does some crazy things when it's in self-survival mode. So I'm seeing that. I literally thought, holy shit, this dude just killed my dog. And I got like really sad in the moment because I felt like I killed my own dog. And these like emotions like came over me. And I was like really sad in the moment, believe it or not. And so I'm firing at this guy. I don't even know where my dog's at. He was so concerned now about the dog. It totally threw this dude off. Like he obviously wasn't expecting that. And you can see that diverted his attention. Now he's kind of looking for the dog while I'm shooting at him, and he diverts and starts running up this little dirt embankment towards a business, which has a wheelchair ramp. And you can see in the video, one of my rounds actually hits him in the back, hits his backpack. And if you look close enough, you can see this big poof of water come out of his bag. And I remember seeing that in real life. And I'm like, I hit him, but he's still running. So what ultimately would happen is it hit a like metal water canister and hit a water bottle in his backpack. It deflected the round, but exploded the thing, right? So he now is running up this ramp. Out of nowhere, I see Axel coming out of my peripheral, and I'm like, holy shit, my dog's not dead. And he re-engages this guy.
He's back in it.
He's back in it.
Like a warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Like next thing I know, Axel jumps up and grabs this dude by the calf and just yanks him down on this wheelchair ramp. So I'm still running, I'm still shooting, and I have zero cover. I mean, I have nowhere to take cover. There's nothing. Joe is now running parallel with me, and now Joe is firing. And I'll share a story with you after this, what Joe told me after the fact. But so now I'm up to this guy, right? And he's down on the ground. I can see Axel. He's engaged on his calf, and he ends up sitting up. The suspect sits up, and he now points the gun at me point blank. And I'm probably within 3 or maybe 4 feet of him. And honest to God, I remember looking down the barrel of that gun, and it's a .357 Magnum. So it's not a small gun. It's a big one. Okay. Yeah. Dirty Harry's out there. And I remember looking down that barrel of that gun, and I thought, this is it. This is it for me. Like, I'm done. And you can even see my body language in the video as I'm shooting. I'm like literally one-handed, extending my gun out as close as I can to him, but I'm trying to make myself as small as I can and sideways, which, guys are laughing at me after the fact, like, oh, you look like a freaking doing a ballerina move or something. Yeah, because I didn't want to get shot.
Yeah.
So I'm engaging him. And again, like now I'm thinking to myself, like, fuck, I'm going to have to shoot Axel. And so I went through this first little thing with thinking like he's dead. Now I'm thinking like, well, I'm going to have to kill him now because he's engaged in this guy, and I'm shooting.
To deal with him.
Yeah.
Full view of him.
And for those of you that are out there listening, maybe not even in law enforcement, getting into law enforcement, whatever, under these types of situations, we are training shoot center mass. You cannot try to shoot around the dog and take your target area to like this size. I mean, it looks great in the movies, right? Where we're shooting guns out of fucking people's hands and shit like that. It's not realistic. So what Kyle's talking about here is he's got to take that center mass shot.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I have to end that. Right. And so, so as that's happening, like, again, I'm thinking in my head like that, I did not want to have to do that. And that's like every handler's, I think, worst nightmare is to like have to shoot and kill your own dog. But it's self-survival mode at that point. I don't have a choice. And so the suspect, when he points it at me, he ends up getting 2 rounds off. And really, I think because Axel was on his calf, and I remember the guy like getting pulled by the dog. And he's also got such a big gun that like when he shot it like, I remember it kicking up, and luckily that round goes right past my head, hits the building behind me. And then he ends up getting another round off, which goes past my head and blows out the window behind me. And I was able to get effective shots on him at that point. And I see him go down. My gun goes dry, so I'm out of rounds. Axel is still on him. But now I lose sight of the dog and the majority of the suspect because there were some hedges there. I retreat. Another patrol car pulls up. I take cover behind that car. I'm reloading my gun. I can see the upper half of the bad guy, but I can't see the dog. And I'm recalling him. I'm like trying to recall him. He's not coming. And I never had any issues recalling Axel off a bite. It just he was good at that. So
he might have been a little pissed off at that point.
Well, and we talked about this later, right? Like he just took how many rounds next to his head?
Yeah.
What's that done to his hearing?
Oh,
right?
I guarantee you it deafened him. And I know, so it took a huge chunk of his hair out on his muzzle, and it like burned his face a little bit. So from the muzzle blast. So I have no doubt that he probably just couldn't hear me and was so just engaged in this guy that, he's in such drive that, he wasn't listening. He couldn't hear me, but I'm thinking he's shot or dead. I didn't know. So I actually start telling Joe, I'm like, hey, Axel's down, and he wasn't coming back. I take cover behind this patrol car. I see the dude, he's still moving around. He actually has a gun in his hand still. And so I actually taken one more shot at him, and which goes off, and then my gun goes click. And I tell you what, like when you're in a gunfight and your gun goes click, that's a pretty shitty feeling. So like we mentioned earlier, right? all that training, like secondhand nature, muscle memory kicked in. I get my gun back in battery. And ultimately, I think what happened was when I seated my mag after reloading due to stress or whatever, I didn't hammer that thing in there good enough. And when I got that first round off, the mag dropped out a little bit. And so no round seated back in the chamber. So, tap rack, go, whatever, if that, that's the thing to do now, but I'm sure there's some other tacticians out there like, that's old school, whatever, save my ass. Get the gun back in battery and get a couple more shots off. And now I don't see the guy moving. And I end up making my way around so I can get kind of a better visual of him. Dog's still not coming back to me. I'm eating him, nothing. I tell Joe, I was like, fuck, Axel's dead, dude. And out of nowhere, like it seemed like forever, but when you watch the video, not that much time goes by, but Axel comes out from around the bushes. And if you watch his body language, you can tell he's like wigged out. Like what just happened?
Yeah.
So his tail's down. His ears are back, and he's like kind of looking for me. I grab a hold of him. He's covered in blood. I'm like, okay, he's alive. He's shot, but he's not dead. And Nate now shows up, and he did a really good job of, he was like the calm voice when everybody was jacked up and took control. I told Nate, hey dude, the dog's been hit. I was like, dude, I've been hit. There was a team of guys that formed up who dealt with the suspect. And at that time, that's kind of when my stomach sank, because I was like, how bad am I injured? And that made me sick to my stomach, to be honest, because I felt like, dude, I could be dying right now and I don't even know. And so I start ripping my uniform off. Like I didn't, honestly, at the time, the dog became like secondary, which is something I tell guys, is you have to treat yourself before you treat your dog, because you're no good to your dog or anybody else, right? If you're critically injured. So I kind of like put the dog aside and start focusing on myself, rip the uniform off, realize it hit my vest, whatever, rip my vest. But I'm good. And so now my focus became the dog, and Nate and I have a conversation of, and these are the lessons I learned from this. We both did. And we talked about this is, who's going to drive to the vet, and what are we going to do with his dog in his car? It's July. It's hot. It's 100+ degrees outside. Those became a big factor in this conversation, and which is time that we were losing. If I thought Axel was bleeding out, which we know dogs bleed out really quickly because they don't have a lot of blood. So that probably only took a couple minutes before we were able to figure out what we were going to do, which was Nate drive my car, load Axel in my car. I'm going to ride passenger. And we assigned an officer who we trusted to Nate's vehicle with his dog to ensure that the car stayed running and that the AC stayed on so that something didn't happen to his dog. So we did that. We then had a brief conversation about what vet are we going to go to, because we're in a urban environment where there's vets all around us. Some are trauma vets, some aren't. And then the ones that are trauma vets, which one's closer to where we are right now? And again, that took probably another minute or two of a conversation of where we're going to go. And I was able to kind of gather my thoughts a little bit. And I'm like, okay, this vet is closest trauma vet. I knew it was a trauma vet to where we are, go there. But he didn't know where it was. So now I'm telling him where to go. I'm on another radio channel frequency and telling our dispatchers to call that vet, let them know we're en route with a dog that's been shot. And I'm also trying to direct Nate on where to go. So we end up getting to the vet. They're waiting for us. And to my shock, other than the injuries on his face, he wasn't shot at all. And I even was like in such disbelief. I remember telling the vet tech, I'm like, bullshit, scan him again. He's shot. And the blood on Axel was from the suspect. So turns out he didn't get shot. I don't know how, because I shot, I think, a total of 17 rounds. And Joe, my partner, shot 10 or almost a full mag, all directed at the suspect with the dog on him. So I don't know how that worked out, but luck, if you believe in luck or whatever you believe in. I mean, he got lucky.
You said Joe shared some thoughts with you later.
And yeah, so it all worked out. Okay. A suspect was found, he was deceased. And yeah, one of the things that Joe told me after the fact was, and not his fault, he's brand new, but when he saw the dog engage the dude, and even though he and I are exchanging gunfire at each other, Joe admitted that it threw him off because he felt like he didn't want to initially engage because he didn't want to shoot the dog. Mm-hmm. And I know people that are listening to this they're thinking that's stupid. It's not stupid because it goes against like everything that we tell the cops not to do. But I think as handlers, it's so crucial. And I learned such a big lesson out of him telling me that, to make sure you have that conversation with your patrol teams. Hey, if my dog is on a bite and a deadly threat presents itself, don't worry about the dog. Like you have to engage. And if that means you shoot the dog and kill him, that means you shoot and kill the dog, and the dog dies a hero.
So there's a couple points that you just brought up. Number one, as handlers, you guys need to be out there and take the lead on this, because we already talked about the supervision end. Like, they're not prepared for this as far as now that the dog's in the mix, right? Like, how much training are your guys getting? The handlers, if you're listening to this, you're the handler. You have to take the responsibility of doing this interdepartment training your shift. So as a result of Kyle's shooting, we've had a couple other ones where dogs have been shot and shot at. And we now do a briefing with our guys, and this is something that you guys can take to your agency. Number one, you've just been involved in a deadly force situation, so you should not be jumping in your car and speeding to the vet, right? You're not in that mindset. And the last thing we need to do is stack up a car en route to the vet with a dog that's possibly injured. So you need to talk to your shift, say, hey, somebody else is going to drive my car. Number two, something that you can do a quick check and run your hands over the body of your dog to see if you can ascertain if the dog's been hit. It's funny, but you would think you'd be like, oh shit, okay, he's been shot right in the side. It's very hard to find that wound.
Yeah, really
it's very
hard.
Deceiving. So, but if you do locate it, then soft muzzle your dog, because he ain't going to be happy, right? He's going to be in pain. So even this dog that cuddles up with you at night on long shifts is not going to want to feel like cuddling now and can become aggressive. Throw a soft muzzle. This is going to mean you got to know where your shit is in your car. You got to have that soft muzzle in a place. You can't be digging through your bag. Like, and just talking with Kyle here, like, you can see the minutes starting to tick away as we work through this. So soft muzzle them. You can get them for like $10 online.
Most of the vets will give you one.
Most of the vets will give you one.
Yeah.
Throw a muzzle on your dog. You get in the back with your dog. If you need to apply pressure, you apply pressure. That could mean the difference. We've had guys get to the vet, and we're dealing with mals and high drive shepherds. So what do the whole way to the vet? They're just circling back there. They're just bleeding out. They don't know they've been shot, right? So even if it's a 5-minute ride to the vet, it could make the difference for you to get back there. The other thing is you need to have this conversation with your supervisors. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, Kyle's car's part of the crime scene. Kyle's part of the crime scene. Like, he's going to be gone. Supervisor's going to arrive, and they're going to be like, all right, we need the public safety statement. Where's Kyle?
Yeah.
He's gone.
That happened in mine.
You got to prepare them for it, right? Because we think about the incident, we don't think about the aftermath, and you're going to have a lot of agencies coming in, and some supervisors can get kind of upset and wound up about this. So you need to prepare them in advance. And so far, when we've done these trainings, everybody's like, okay, I get it, right? We need to save this dog. We're not going to make you stay on scene with your dog, and that's going to take priority over the scene. So regardless, the briefing training is invaluable. And then make sure, again, you're going to have somebody else drive you to the vet. You should have a list of vets, maybe laminated in your vehicle, in the visor, somewhere accessible that you can hand them and be like, fucking pick the closest one and let's go, and update that regularly. So that's just some of the things you guys can do on the front end to prepare for this, because like Kyle's saying, like, when this shit goes down, like, to think through this and come up with a plan. And luckily you did think through it and you did come up with a plan, because we've got officers throwing their dog in the back and freaking driving. It's raining out. It's dark. They've just been in an officer involved shooting. They think their dog has been shot. Like, their driving is crap. Like, it's the lucky that they arrived to the vet, and it could have been worse, right? And then so these are the type of things you guys want to think of in advance and prepare your shift.
Yeah. Those were the lessons that we learned, and you know, very, very open about that. And yeah, I mean, that like those lessons were invaluable, and those like small minutes, albeit isn't a long time, but it is a long time when your dog is potentially dying or bleeding out. And like you said, if you're going to drive that fast to the vet and you get into a crash and hurt somebody, I don't think the excuse of, hey, well, my dog was shot, I was trying to get him to the vet, that's not going to get you out of going to jail probably. So something to think about. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons out of that. I feel like I should have known that leading up to it. I didn't, and I didn't fully prepare myself for that. But, you know, that's how I think it's big talking about it, because I'll share my mistakes with other people and say, dude, don't let that happen to you. And there's a lot of handlers that'll say the same thing.
And go the next step, go visit that vet, right? I mean, you think, you know, like, hey, I know where the vet is, but at 11 o'clock at night or something like that, or some shit, like you don't know what door to go to, then you're frantic, you're running around trying to get in. Like, have a plan with your vet. The vets want to have that conversation. You know, they want to be part of that.
Well, and one step further than that, I had the unfortunate experience of having one of my dogs die on duty due to a seizure. And he just freezes up, Rambo. He freezes up in the back, and then it's just like, what the fuck's going on back there? And he's starting to urinate and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, he's fucking going down. And I got on the radio and told dispatch, hey, let the vet know I'm en route, code 3. And when I pulled up, like, they were already outside waiting for him. Boom, carried him right into the stretcher. He didn't make it, but we did everything we could in that situation. So that would be another piece of this puzzle is let the vet know you're coming, so they can have all their shit ready. They had the freaking front cleared out, and they went to work right away. So, and I mean, you know, talking about your mistakes there, dude, like, you're a fucking warrior. Like, you did a fucking phenomenal job. Yeah. And it's like, I love, and this is part of what we need to do as an industry, you know, bringing this vulnerability of like, hey, this is what I was thinking. This is what I did wrong. You know, and I'm doing that in quotes because it's so fucking minor compared to everything that you did. And then sharing that so we can learn and grow as an industry. And so for that, I mean, and Kyle, you've talked about these shootings before, and you know, dude, the freaking what the information you're given is just so invaluable and so appreciated. But you did a fucking awesome job in that situation.
And speaking of that, I want to throw out there. I don't want people thinking like, well, what'd Joe do? So I said he had that hesitation of like shooting with a dog on. He did engage, right? He snapped himself out of that really quickly. And he did engage. And so I commend the shit out of him being 1 week off of FTO, getting into this crazy gunfight involving a dog. And, you know, he's thinking to himself, like, do I shoot? Like, you know, and then overcoming that. I just want to throw it out there if anybody's wondering. I mean, yeah, he did fully engage and got in that fight. But it was something in the back of his mind. And that again taught us like, okay, we need to make sure that all the patrol guys know that this is what you need to do regardless.
Well, in your experiences, as you're going through all these OISs and the dog stuff, like this obviously is not a typical career.
Yeah. I hope
you learned a lot, you learned a lot, and you got a lot shoved into that small space and time, and obviously came out on the other end better. What are you doing with that stuff now? What kind of classes do you have going on out there? What are you providing to other cops? Obviously learning from you is something that people should take advantage of. So what do you got going on?
Yeah. So exactly. So with that experience, I thought, man, I feel like I have something, maybe not everything, but something that potentially could help other people, right? Just based on things that I have gone through. And so I decided to come up with a training company, Field Survival Training, and you can go to my website, fieldsurvivaltraining.com. But I do offer a class, Surviving Deadly Encounters, and a lot of it touches on dealing with officer-involved shootings, the mental health side of it, right? I dealt with that stuff on my own. And, you know, what to expect in a shooting, not only before, but then also after, post-shooting. But also, I think most importantly, which is everything we've pretty much just touched on, is conditioning your brain to manage stress so that when you get into these super high stressful situations where you're going from 0 to 1,000 and that adrenaline and dopamine and everything just spikes in your body, that you can like cognitively think through all that to make a good decision. because we all watch these body cam video footages of cops either getting killed, hurt, or making a bad decision. I think what it comes down to is just guys and gals can't think through that high of stress. And so that's what I offer. And you
didn't get all that information just yourself. You didn't just go home and be like, hey, I know how to deal with this better.
No.
Like, you went and got professional help.
Absolutely.
To help yourself survive that whole situation. And it all sounds fun, right? Like this, I have 2 young 20-something-year-olds in law enforcement right now, my kids. And I know they're going to listen to the story and be like, oh, that's badass. And he was shooting and there was dogs and all that. But there's an emotional toll that takes on you if you're human.
Totally.
Right. I mean, I guess maybe there's robots out there that like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just shoot people.
Probably not suitable to be a cop then.
Probably. Right. Like if this whole thing doesn't affect you, you got other things going on. So it affects you in a way. And you're like, hey, I'm affected by this. Had to take some time off of work, deal with some stuff, went out and found professionals to help you work through it. And now you're able to kind of give that information that you got from them to other cops that are dealing with the same stuff.
Absolutely. Yes. I did go seek, it's called EMDR treatment. And that's a professional treatment that it's for post-trauma. And so I took 6 months off of work. I went through that series of process and then came back. And then unfortunately within months, I was involved in this shooting I just described to you guys. So, but I was able to process all of that a lot better. Thankfully that I did all that EMDR therapy because when I was involved in this, I was able to process it. And then I was able to go to Joe and make Joe go through the EMDR therapy because I didn't want him to go through what I went through, which is not getting any help or talking about it or anything after the fact.
On your first week of your career as a cop, right? Or
Getting thrown into that. So I strongly encourage that he did it. He did it. And, to this day, I think he's thankful that he did because he's able to process what happened. And he's still a stud of a cop to this day. So, yes, I did do that. I've spoken to a lot of other officers who have been in shootings, similar circumstances, some way worse. And what I always stress to people and what I want everyone to understand is that it doesn't have to be something crazy like that to think that like the one thing I hate hearing is like, hey, I'm feeling this way or whatever, but like, dude, I didn't experience what you went through. Like mine, then they like downplay whatever it is that like is bothering them. It could be a baby death, right? It could be a car accident. It could be something what we would feel like would be minor. Look, it's all just based on what experiences you have and what trauma that like you've been exposed to. It doesn't have to be to that extreme to feel like that. And if you are feeling like that, then you hit me up. I'll guide you in the right direction. But that is one thing I did want to say is like, don't underplay or don't underestimate like your trauma that you've been experienced to as a cop.
Yeah, this stuff
to other people.
This stuff compiles. Greg and I talk about it. We both find like we had Ryan on, got in the shooting in Tehama County, and that we played that whole call, right? And Greg and I both had to stop because we were both emotional, right? Like on the verge of tears. Like you get so like wrapped up in that, and we care so much, and you've had 20 plus years of experience doing things, like you said, dead children, people killed on like railroad tracks, a bad accident. Like it doesn't have to be shootings.
No,
you have to see a lot of families that are dealing with loss. You deal with a lot of young kids that are dealing with traumatic events happening to them. And then you go have a cup of coffee, right? And then you go grab a burrito, and then you go 10-8, and then you
and drink a bang
with your buddies, and you're like, you drink a bang. You shuck and jive with your buddies, and you push that back, and you push that back. And I'll throw myself under the bus. After 26 years of doing police work, now I can watch something that seems relatively mundane on TV, but has an emotional flair to it.
100%,
and I catch myself getting shaky or tear, I'm like, do I not have the ability to deal with like normal emotional stuff? That was an AT&T commercial, for God's sake, and now I got both my kids in law enforcement, and I like, I'm a little more emotional because I think for 26 years, you're like, shelve it.
Totally.
And now it's there. It's like, and I don't have any reason to shelve it anymore because I'm not I'm not doing police work. And so if something comes up and I'm a more emotionally vulnerable than I've ever been. Totally. And I find myself feeling like a candy ass, you're like, Jesus, dude, get a hold of yourself. Like, and I know what it is. And I talk about it, and I talk to my wife about it. I talk to my kids about it. I don't hide it like guys in the 70s and 80s did, like,
oh yeah.
Drink that away, right? Like, anyway, it's a dog. This is a dog podcast, and we're going.
But it's important.
But I
think
it is really important because we all deal with it.
Yeah, and it's a cop podcast, right? And so, and again, the dog is a part of it. But really, if you're listening to this, chances are you're in law enforcement. And Kyle, you've already shared a lot with us. Can you just talk about some of the things you went through, kind of mentally, and maybe some things that like guys that have been, just like Rich is talking about, like that have been doing this for a long time, like some warning signs that might point to like, hey, maybe you need to reach out. And if you're going to reach out, where do I go? And like, you know, what's going on with me? Why am I crying during an AT&T commercial or whatever, you know, because we don't talk about that. Right. And I think that's what's made us better as a profession, and a lot less guys are dying 2 years after they retire because they are dealing with this shit. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, talk a little bit about like kind of what you went through and some of your thoughts, and then what was the catalyst for you to get help? Yeah. So I was, I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was, I was watching The Notebook at home with my girlfriend. I just started bawling more than she was. No, that's very normal. It's very, it's not normal. Totally no, I mean, no. Okay. Seriously though. You know, honestly for me, it was, I found myself at work, not enjoying it anymore. Right. Like I would live for like that next high of adrenaline, and I wasn't enjoying that. In fact, I felt scared of it, and I felt like I would get severe anxiety. I would feel my heart rate, you know, just on a call where, you know, probably just an everyday call, my heart rate would just spike, and I would start to feel myself kind of get shaky. And I got really good at hiding it, but it was there, and I'd be on a call and, you know, whatever, it could have been something minor, but I'm like the guy that's like taking cover behind a freaking tree that's like this big. And everyone's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, this motherfucker is going to come out and try to kill us. Like I got to the point where I thought everybody was going to try to kill me, which is super unhealthy. And I'm not the kind of guy, dude, I am not like bleed blue outside of being a cop. Right. And I know you guys talk about that. I think that is so important not to be like that. I am not like that. And so I'm not the guy that goes to a restaurant and I'm like, I got to have my back to the back of the door because of somebody. I'm not that guy. Okay. But I just felt like I was finding myself almost like, I guess the best word to probably use would be like scared in those moments. And when you're the canine guy, like I still had to perform. And I remember one time being in a car chase and coming back shortly after one of my shootings. I can't remember which one. And this dude tosses a gun out the car on this pursuit. And I remember thinking, I don't even want to be in this right now. Right. Cause that like triggered it for me. And then, you know, I was angry all the time. I was treating coworkers like shit. I lost a lot of friendship relationships, in my workplace. I noticed guys were like distancing themselves from me, and some of my friends were moving up the food chain and promoting, and they were like, didn't really want anything to do with me. Right. Because they don't want to associate with the negative guy, the cancer cannon I was the cancer cell essentially. And I was in denial about it. Some people would kind of bring it up to me. I did try to bring it up to a lieutenant who no longer works for us. And the one time I tried to confide into somebody, he was like, his response was, hey, just because you've been in some shootings, like doesn't make you better than anybody. So I totally got rejected. Yeah. And then that shut me down even more, because then it was really like that, like in law enforcement, man, that ego, and that like stigma is like really there. Yeah. And when I got shut down, it was like, okay, now I just felt kind of like, fuck, I was on an island. And I felt like I was the only one that felt like that. And like nobody else felt like that. I'm like, what, you know, WTF. So honest to God, one day I was getting ready for work, getting my K9 uniform on, getting my pants on. I'm in my bedroom, and I started feeling anxiety again. And I'd been going through this now for like several months, if not longer, a year probably. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I was like, I was just going to quit, like cold turkey, not even be a cop anymore. And I called my sergeant. I said, hey, I'm not coming to work today. I'm done. And he's like, wait, are you sick? What's going on? And he's like, yeah, like, no, I'm quitting. I was like, hey, if you guys need to come get the dog in the car, if you need to take Axel, like I totally understand. But I'm not doing this anymore. And he was like, dude, what the fuck? And he's like, hey, meet me in a parking lot.
And I give this guy a lot of respect. I don't really know him, but he happened to be the patrol sergeant that day and wasn't someone that I probably got along with. And he's met me in a parking lot. It was a McDonald's parking lot. He brought some paperwork with him and he's like, hey, I'm going to put you out on workman's comp. We'll file this as a work injury. He's like, do not quit. Go get some help. And he's all, you want to know something? And I'm like, what? And he goes, we've all been wondering when you were going to do this. And I was like, wow. So that told me behind closed doors, people knew that I was fucked up. They knew there was a
problem.
Yeah, they knew there was a problem. And guess what? Not one
Nobody
person fucking addressed it with me. Not one. So I'm glad he took that time and that like small moment to kind of share that with me. And then it was like, now I'm off of work and it's like, well, fuck, now what do I do? Right. There was no like guidance on what to do when you're out on stress or whatever. So
yeah, you go down to the work comp doctor that
which is a joke.
Can't diagnose your broken wrist.
So that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But long story short, I started doing my own research and that's when I came across EMDR therapy and I really dove into that. I found a therapist that I felt was suitable for me and she was awesome. And I've referred a shit ton of people to her. And she does strictly first responders for post-trauma therapy. So that's how I got started into that. I just had to do my own research on it. And you
comfortable throwing out their information?
Yeah, well, absolutely. She's totally cool with it. So Melissa Freitas, she's in Rockland. You can look her up. She's actually was on one of our podcast episodes. I'm actually thinking about bringing her back in here and doing another one with her in studio. But so you can listen to that. And she explains to you why we develop trauma. The fact that trauma gets stored in our brain with positive things in our life. And those two things just don't communicate with each other in our brains. And so what EMDR therapy does is it forces the nerves in your brain, the bad and the good, to overlap with each other. And it basically teaches them to communicate. And so you're, not feeling guilt anymore, feeling bad about things. Like your brain just comprehends it and understands it. And so that's what I went through. And honestly, I tell her all the time, I'm like, that really saved me. It for sure saved my career, probably saved my relationship, amongst many other things. And now I'm able to go out and share that with people. I have no qualms about being vulnerable. I had a friend 1 week after that shooting that we just talked about at the mall with Axel. I went to the hospital after that just to get checked. My buddy, who's a cop at a neighboring agency, heard it over the scanner. I grew up with him. Our families are good friends. In fact, he showed up at the hospital and stayed with me for several hours while I was getting checked out. And he was actually the one who called my parents and let them know that I was in that shooting. He ended up dying 7 days later, and it was due to excessive drinking because he had his own issues and didn't talk about it. So I'm very open about it. I share that story in my class with Cam. So, yeah.
So we've all worked with guys. I'm going to go one more step deeper on this. We've all worked with guys and gals that that you're working with that are having a hard time.
Yeah.
What's the best way to talk to those people? I mean, to kind of start that conversation with them without making them feel like,
hey, are you
attacking me? Are you ostracizing me? Or are you making fun of me? Because that's what we would typically do. We would give them shit. Right?
Yeah.
And let's be honest, like, Greg, you were a supervisor. You actually have to tread lightly, right, with the way you word things with people, because if someone thinks you're attacking them based on like maybe a disability or something
mental
that they
health
have
issues,
that could go wrong because people might take it the wrong way. So I think there's first of all, I mean, this could be, I'm not going to make this a long-winded answer, but I would just say having people that are vulnerable about it, to talk about it, I think makes those people feel comfortable to come to them, which, believe me, being vulnerable about all this, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, which I'm totally fine with. But I feel like if you want to be the one to initiate that conversation, I think it needs to be the right person, and it needs to be one-on-one, and you're not confronting them about, hey, well, you're a fucking asshole or you're a dickhead. Like, what's going on with you? I think you just have that one-on-one conversation of, hey, is everything going okay? I know you've been involved in these things recently. Like, I just want to check in with you. Maybe that's a peer support member doing that. And the way we run peer support is we have people that have been involved in all different things reach out to employees who have been involved in certain similar circumstances so that there's that relation there. And that seems to work really well. So I would say it doesn't have to be, me, Kyle, as the supervisor of someone and I'm noticing these effects of, maybe I identify somebody in my department that shares similar circumstances as that person. And I have that person do it because that builds a different type of relationship. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
And so I have found that works really well, and people are way more receptive to it than some random person who may not understand what that person's going through, try to do it. I don't think that connection is there.
Agree.
So sorry if that was a long-winded answer.
I think it's important to share that and I appreciate you sharing everything that you have and doing the classes and putting yourself out there. I think it matters and it makes a difference in the industry.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. So what do you got coming up? You got some classes coming up out there?
Yeah, I have a lot.
What's your schedule?
Yeah. So I've been traveling all over the country this year. It's been pretty hectic. I think I've been in 3 or 4 states in a matter of like 2 months, maybe. And I've got some other classes lined up. We have one through field survival training. Mark, another instructor, has an officer rescue class coming up in Elk Grove, being hosted by Elk Grove. That's a great class. I mean, that's everything from basic medical aid if you're wounded, all the way to doing officer rescues, for guys that are either pinned down or been shot and need to get out of a bad situation. Tactics apply to that, which is crazy because I was involved in an officer rescue last year, first on scene with a cop that was shot and dying. And so a lot of lessons learned out of that. But and then let's see, we started our podcast a year ago, Shots Fired Podcast. If you guys want to check that out, we're here in our studio, as we mentioned earlier. And again, if you're listening, you can jump over to our Shots Fired Podcast YouTube channel, and this episode is on there. So you can check out these two dudes that you listen to all the time. And the thought behind that was the guys I do it with, we all have a different level of experience, and we wanted to get that experience out there to as many people as we can. And podcasting, I think, is like the best tool to do that, because I can only be in one place at one time with a certain amount of cops. And that's a very minute way of training and getting information out to people. Whereas this, like, and what you guys are doing, I mean, you're reaching out to cops all over the world, and people are gaining something by listening to this. So that was the thought behind doing the podcast. And we've dumped a lot of time, energy, money into it. And it's, I think, really benefited people. We get a lot of positive feedback. So it's all law enforcement content related. We cover everything, so that's just what we're doing now. A lot of traveling, working weekend graves still.
Nice.
And just trying to get out there and be as beneficial as I possibly can to whoever wants to hear it.
Good stuff. Greg, you have some other stuff coming up this month as well?
Yeah, we do. We got K9 supervision class coming up down in Palm Springs. That is full. And then
that's funny how sometimes the location. I do pet dogs, and every time we do a pet dog class that involves a brewery, blows up.
Yeah,
goes up.
I see that on your Instagram. I'm like, I'm all weird.
Yeah,
weird how that happens.
We still have some slots available in Fresno. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, can I go to that one?
Yeah.
Sorry, Fresno.
No offense.
Yeah.
No. Kyle and I will be down in San Diego coming up in December
that's right.
For CHP.
Yeah, that's good.
Doing your thing down there.
That's the California Highway Patrol for all you folks that don't know what CHP is.
If there's a old show on there, Ponch and John.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Chips?
Really?
Chips?
Yeah. Okay. That's
course.
kind of before your time, but.
I used to watch Chips.
All right. And then
on Nick at Night,
Stanbro's coming out. You want to talk about that?
Stanbro coming out to teach an e-collar class for law enforcement. It's kind of for guys that aren't using the e-collar effectively. If you're still only using the e-collar as a means to punish your dog, it's time to move into 2022. Eric Stambro is going to come out, teach that class up at Reading PD. Reading PD is hosting that class. they're bringing them out specifically for their dogs, but they're sharing the space with anybody else in the region that wants to get some information about e-collar without conflict is the design of the class.
Yep,
so
fill up quick. So
that's in the week of November 14th.
How do they find out information on that? Is there
go to Reading PD or Stanbro through Van Ness K9 has got it advertised there. Reading PD K9 has it advertised. So you can reach out to Officer Jamie Ruland at Reading PD. He's got information on that. And then Eric Stanbro himself has some information. And I, of course, have some information. So we can help you get going on that.
Yeah.
Nice.
A lot of directions. Then we have a tracking class coming up December 6th through 9th. Stan Semenuk is going to be doing that one. We've had him on the podcasts previously. He's a tracking guru, and he takes a bunch of different disciplines, brings them all together. And so that's going to be...
That's the cool thing about Stan is he has gone to several other tracking seminars, learned what works best for him and the region that they work in. And, it's... get a really good tracking guy that works in the swamps of Florida may not be the same as working in the mountains of Placer County, so he's making it work for the best way to do it, for him, but he's taking so much input from other trainers that it's a really valuable class.
Yeah. Contrary to what you guys think out there, California does do some tracking. I know that's everybody's like, California don't do it. No, we do tracking.
Yeah. You're just area searching, doing area searching. It's like,
not if you're smart, so
that's true.
Kyle, how does somebody get a hold of you if they want to host one of these classes or find out, where they're at or anything like that?
Yeah. So, if you'd like to host a class, you can go to my website, fieldsurvivaltraining.com. There's a list of classes on there. You can get a hold of me through that for that. I have Instagram. I jumped on the bandwagon for that a year ago.
TikTok?
No, God, no.
Oh,
no TikTok.
So Instagram, Kyle _Schoberg, and all of this will be I'll put in the description in this video. And then our podcast Instagram is Shots Fired Podcast Official on Instagram. And then again, if you're interested in listening to our podcast as well, you can check out Shots Fired Podcast on YouTube or anywhere. If you just listen to it on audio, it's on all audio platforms as well. So
awesome.
That's about it.
Rich, you got anything?
You can get a hold of us, Ridgeside K9 NorCal. We're on Facebook, Instagram. If you want to email me, rsk9rich@gmail.com. All things pets and police dogs, we can help you out with all that. Matter of fact, we were just on the LAO page earlier today, kind of helped some guys out with some problems they were having with their dogs, attacking them when they got done playing fetch. Dealing with little things like that. They can turn into big things for sure. And to get a hold of you.
DTAC K9, DTACK, the number 9. I'm going to start posting stuff on Instagram again. I think I talked about this on the last podcast about balancing life, balancing your family, balancing your career, your home, everything you're doing around your house and family and everything. And I think I've got that pretty much in check, including my own health. And that goes out to you guys too. Make sure you're staying fit, make sure you're eating right. Because when you go through this kind of stuff, that can make all the difference in the world. And you can survive a violent confrontation, again, could make all the difference in the world. That could be another great podcast we'll do one of these days. But until then, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Kyle, thank you very much for coming in here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for displaying the vulnerability that a lot of times as cops we don't like to, but you're doing it in the interest of letting these guys get information that can potentially save lives. So I guarantee you with all the information you've been giving out, you've touched a lot of people, and for that we are grateful. So with that,
train hard.
Stay safe.